President Biden has announced sanctions on Russia. He also acknowledged the sanctions the U.S. has imposed upon Russia are going to have an impact on energy prices at home.
As I said last week, defending freedom will have cost for us as well and here at home. We need to be honest about that.
We know they are going to have costs, but what are we going to get in return for those costs? Joining me now to give his assessment of the current situation is U.S. Representative and a member of the Committee on Armed Services, Congressman Pat Fallon. Congressman Fallon, welcome back to the show.
Joseph, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, we are thankful for your time. It's a difficult week. What is your sense of how things have developed over the last 48 hours after the Russian invasion of Ukraine?
Well, somebody asked me earlier, could the Ukrainian people, Joseph, be the X factor? And I said, absolutely. I think they are the X factor. Putin he's counting on a quick and relatively, quote unquote, painless victory. And if it's denied to him and he can't take Kiev, now all indications are they very well may take it this weekend. But the bigger the price that can be extracted by the Ukrainian people, quite frankly, the better it is for the cause of freedom and liberty around the world, because this is nothing more than an affront to every country. It's a threat to global peace and stability. And he's trying to force his will on a sovereign nation. And we need to inflict crippling sanctions, and we cannot relent.
Now, let's talk a moment about those sanctions. You've been critical this week of the Biden administration's response. What do you think we should be doing that we are not presently doing?
So, Joseph, a couple of the mistakes that were made by the Biden administration, they delayed lethal aid back in October to the Ukrainians. We should have, and I wrote a letter and I signed on to it back then, encouraging and urging the president to do that. He didn't. He dragged his feet. It's inexplicable. And he didn't outline specific sanctions if Putin was to invade, and I wish he had done that. Canceling the Keystone Pipeline XL was obviously a huge mistake. Halting energy exploration leases on federal lands and offshore. We never even appointed an ambassador to the Ukraine. And that's signaling to the world, and particularly the Russians, that you're taking that seriously. So what can we do now? I would encourage the president to immediately sanction the secondary bond market of the Russians. He has done so. He has imposed some sanctions on some banks and some corporations. I would expand that. Some of the oligarchs, he finally, I believe, or is about to sanction Putin himself. But we need to deny them access to the SWIFT, which is the global electronic banking system. And if we do those things, because what this is amounting to, this is an economic siege, and who's going to win is the person, the other person that blinks first will lose, and Putin's counting on the West to do that.
Now, I think a lot of people are wondering, and I include myself in this, what is the reason that the United States would withhold any of our sanctions? It's difficult to imagine a more egregious violation of international norms. Why would the U.S. government restrain itself in any way with respect to the response for sanctions against Russia?
Joseph, great question. And it's quite frankly the dependency on oil and the dependency on Russian oil. That's why I thought it was a huge strategic mistake almost a year and a half ago when Biden came into office and canceled the Keystone Pipeline. And he was hamstringing America's energy industry. And the Democrats on the Hill were vilifying our own folks that give us such latitude. When you talk to Mike Pompeo, he'll tell you, the former Secretary of State, when he would go to other countries and be talking, the energy independence of America gave him so much more latitude because, quite frankly, we had what a lot of other nations needed and wanted. And we are the largest producer, by the way, largest provider, I should say, of natural gas to Germany. Right now we're giving them more, we're selling them more than the Russians. And we should have had a comprehensive plan in place to supply short, mid, and long term, supply Western Europe with energy. But Biden hasn't done any of that. And if you're an environmentalist, you should be wanting the American workers that are highly skilled with, we have an independent judiciary. We have a rule of law nation. We have a strong environmental lobby. We should be producing this oil and energy, not the Russians and the Iranians and the Venezuelans.
And let's talk about that for a moment. We know that there are certainly different policy. The Trump administration and the Biden administration have taken very different approaches when it comes to domestic energy production. How different is that difference? How much energy were we producing 2 years ago that we aren't now?
Well, we were energy independent then. We literally could supply ourselves with our needs, and we, in theory, didn't have to import any energy at all. We had so much natural gas. A lot of it is technological advances. I mean, fracking was quote, pardon the pun, it was a seismic event for the energy industry. And the liquefied natural gas and being in the pipelines for it. And we've got to remember Canada as well. So we had a vast resource that we're finally harnessing, because I can remember as a kid, the dream of American energy independence was more like a pipe dream. And then we actually achieved it. And then Joe Biden purposely fumbled the ball, catering to a far left environmental lobby. It makes no sense whatsoever. And now we're paying the price. That's why gas prices and energy prices are up. And if we truly do sanction Russia with everything we have, as you just said in a previous question, that's going to include not buying any more of their oil. And that's going to cost, it's going to take a little bit of time for us to produce more energy and oil to get those prices down.
If the Biden administration were to desire to change that and get back to our potential for energy production, how long would it take us to get back to the levels of what we were producing 2 years ago?
That's a great question. I would say it's not going to be days or weeks. It's going to be months.
Right.
And so there's going to be a pinch at the pump. What he should have done, if he had just done nothing, if he had just gone and watched Netflix and not messed with President Trump's energy policies, we'd be so much better off right now. But he did. And Putin's not stupid. Putin is cunning, and he's deliberate, and he's a chess player, and he's thinking 8, 9, 10 moves ahead. He figured we were going to have kind of, weak to middling sanctions, and we didn't disappoint. The Biden administration didn't disappoint him. And he thinks the West will blink. The Nord Stream 2 pipeline, okay, great. The Germans put it on hold. Well, it was going to take them another 6 months of regulatory hoops for it to be online anyway. So have they done anything? If they stay in the Ukraine, the Germans should permanently cancel that project.
A few days ago, John Kerry, of course, President Biden's climate czar, raised some eyebrows when he said he hoped that Putin would, quote, stay on track in the war on climate change, and that he was hoping environmental concerns would influence what Putin was to do. And of course, most of us think that's ridiculous. But is there any sense that this administration doesn't actually want to produce more energy? And is there any possibility that the wartime decisions we're making right now are actually being impacted by environmental concerns?
I don't think you're wrong. Well, I couldn't believe I saw Adam Schiff on television when asked about whether or not he could support more energy being produced in the United States. He said, well, we don't want to upset our climate change protection policy. What in the world do they want hundreds of millions of people to freeze over a winter? I mean, we can't. The renewables are not up to snuff. Okay, for where they cannot provide us the energy that we need right now as a human race. They can't do it. They can't fuel the economy. And if they can, possibly 30, 40, 50 years from now, it may never happen. So let's live within the bounds of reality, shall we? Fossil fuels are needed, and they are essential, and they are American security concern. Our top priority should be this. And now we've seen what the Russians are doing, and it is in large measure about energy, amongst many other things. And I just can't believe we're having these discussions with Democrats when they want to talk about, in theory, they're looking like for the professor vote in the universities.
And I think a lot of Americans would really scratch their heads at the idea that it's environmental concerns that would drive our wartime policy. It's just a strange evaluation of priorities at a moment where everyone recognizes that the world is truly in crisis. Congressman Pat Fallon, thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks for all you're doing for us in Washington and in Texas. Appreciate you being with us.
Thanks, Joseph. Thank you, sir. God bless.
God bless you.